They're young, they're full of enthusiasm, they're optimistic, they're self-confident, they're the sun rays, they're going places.
Frankly, if 16 to 18-year-olds at school are going to be able to vote, we're going to have to make sure that our education system is teaching kids to make their own minds up and not indoctrinating them.
In the United Kingdom, you are not treated as an adult by the state until you turn 18. So 16 and 17-year-olds are legally banned from serving on a jury, adopting a child, buying alcohol in shops, pubs or online, drinking alcohol in a pub or a bar, buying cigarettes or vapes, purchasing solvents like glue, gambling, including even entering the premises of a betting shop or casino, likewise a nightclub, banned from buying fireworks or sparklers, going to an 18-rated movie, buying knives, crossbows, firearms or air weapons, getting married or entering a civil partnership, even procuring a credit card or joining the armed forces without parental consent. I mean, hell, 16 and 17-year-olds in the United Kingdom can't even legally get a tattoo, most body piercings, or even use a bloody sunbed. But today, in one of the most disgusting examples of gerrymandering, translation, vote rigging, Slippery Starmer and Red Rayner have quietly announced without any form of national debate that at the next election, 16 and 17-year-olds will be given the vote. Can you believe that more than half of you are watching this video but not subscribed? So please do me a huge favour, click the subscribe button now, turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to all of our brand new Outspoken videos.
I think it's really important that 16 and 17-year-olds have the vote because they're old enough to go out to work, they're old enough to pay taxes, so to pay in. And I think if you pay in, you should have the opportunity to say what you want your money spent on, which way the government should go. So I'm really pleased that we're able to bring more young people into our democracy and give them the chance to have a say over how their taxes are going to be paid and what they're going to be used for.
Now, the move has been driven by the real leader of our country, our Ange, Red Rayner, who boasted, "For too long, public trust in our democracy has been damaged and faith in our institutions has been allowed to decline. We are taking action to break down barriers to participation that will ensure more people have the opportunity to engage in UK democracy, supporting our plan for change and delivering on our manifesto commitment to give 16-year-olds the right to vote." But let's just think about this for 1 second, because if you really are going to give 16-year-olds the vote, then you are deciding that they are adults. They should be able to do everything on that list that I just ran through. But the irony here is, of course, there's no way Labour would do that. There's no way Labour's going to let 16 and 17-year-olds into pubs, into gambling outfits. They're not going to do that because they know it would increase crime. It would increase the decline of our society. So there's a reason why those youngsters should also not be choosing who's in government. According to Carol Malone, this is nothing short of ballot box stuffing.
But you're saying this is about democracy. This is not. This is gerrymandering. This is actually barefaced ballot box stuffing. That's what they're doing. They know that the people that voted them in are never going to vote for them again. So they're trying to find a whole new tranche of people who will.
Indeed, she says there are even physiological reasons to oppose such an obviously irresponsible decision.
In fact, science tells us that the frontal cortex of the brain, which is about making decisions and assessing things, is not fully developed till you're 25. So we're asking kids, basically kids, to decide. And you're saying all of these kids are going to be working. Most 16-year-olds aren't. They're in education or they're at university.
But even though I am vociferously opposed to this decision on so many levels, my gut feeling is this is going to backfire spectacularly on Labour. Because young people on the whole are moving to the right. And they're moving to the right because they're living through socialism and a daily invasion of our country, and they don't like it because it's their phones being stolen in our major cities, with the police refusing to even bother to show up. It's their homes being taken by illegal migrants who sexually assault their friends in the high street. And the working class white boys know they are being demonized by the deep state. And so what they've been doing, and this is something that happens not just on the right, but on the left too. I mean, look at the Bernie Sanders phenomenon, for example, in the US, is that they have been turning to older men on the right, including Rupert Lowe and, of course, Nigel Farage.
Done a great job. Great job, guys.
Come on, fist bump. Wow. Full on stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
is that good enough to win your approval and follow us?
What do you think?
I think it is, personally.
I think it is.
I agree.
You are cocky, aren't you?
Yeah,
This is a mullet.
Which is a good attribute.
yeah. Oh,
You
thank
go a
you.
long way in life like
Thank
that.
you.
Right, we're going to follow them down?
Yes!
There we go.
Yes!
They're young, they're full of enthusiasm, they're optimistic, they're self-confident, they're the sun rays, they're going places.
Thank you so much.
Can I get a selfie?
Yeah, come on then.
Hold this camera, hold that quickly.
I'm getting one. Don't take all bloody down.
There we go.
So even though Farage has sensibly, and I give him credit for this today, by the way, officially opposed this shocking Labour decision, which he does believe is vote rigging, he clearly sees an opportunity too.
So the government today have announced seismic government election reforms. This means votes will be extended to 16 and 17-year-olds. Now, in the past, I've always said I don't support this because I don't think you should be able to vote in an election if you can't stand as a candidate. And I don't think we should have 16-year-olds in Parliament. But the problem with this is not only do half of youngsters not want the vote, but they have to stay at school now until they're 18. And we know, and I get emails every week from bias in schools. This week, a 12-year-old was sent home for turning up at a party in a Union Jack dress. The educational establishment is full of left-wing prejudice, is full of anti-reform bias. And frankly, if 16 to 18-year-olds at school are going to be able to vote, we're going to have to make sure that our education system is teaching kids to make their own minds up and not indoctrinating them.
Farage has also raised the wider issue of voter ID, bringing the opportunity for the sort of wide-scale fraud we have already seen in areas like Tower Hamlets.
One other thing, Angela Rayner says, for too long, public trust in our democracy has been damaged and our faith in institutions has been allowed to decline. Well, what have they done with voter ID at polling stations? They've said it will be extended to include bank cards. But bank cards don't even have your photograph on. What they're bringing in here is wide open to fraud on a most extraordinary level. But of course they think it'll all be okay because most of the 16 and 17-year-olds are going to vote for us, the Labour Party. Well, reform is in second place with this age group. And I tell you what, if this is what's going to happen, we are going to give this Labour government the shock of their lives. We're going to get 16 and 17-year-olds to vote for us. You know why? Because like me, they want to make Britain great again. They want it to be a place that it's worth growing up in, going to work in. And I think you're going to see a big shift in the polls. The youngsters are coming to reform.
Now, that may well be true, actually. But I have to be honest, that worries me even more because my head tells me that Nigel and Reform UK will now push even harder to the left on certain issues like benefits, like free education, in order to attract the younger vote. And that is the last thing this bloody country needs or can afford. But Reform are taking their chance, and you can't blame them for that because, let's be honest, the Tories are screwed when it comes to youngsters. So as Reform's very youthful councillor Jamie McIver shared alongside a very youthful picture today, full of young Reform supporters, let's be clear, lowering the voting age to 16 is going to be a huge gift to Reform UK. We can debate all we like about if it's right or wrong. The government promised it, so let's make sure we capitalise on it. But sensible youngsters know that this is a mad move. Our very own young superstar 17-year-old Ellie Hodges doesn't want the vote yet. She posted 16 and 17-year-olds, in my opinion, should not be able to vote. Lewis Brackpool pointed out this move reeks of desperation. Labour knows just how unpopular this government is and is now trying to pad their support by lowering the voting age. Not only is it short-sighted, it could potentially backfire on the political establishment. Still, I don't welcome this move. Madeline Grant shared the anger that I feel today, writing, "It is not possible to hate this government enough. They can't pretend this is anything but shameless gerrymandering because they want 16-year-olds to be treated as children in every other way." And Adam Brooks also made a very disturbing point given the lack of English being taught in our schools, writing, "In England, 1 in 5 school children don't use English as their first language." And then he said Labour gives votes to 16-year-olds. I wonder why. Now, it sickens me. It actually sickens me that the battleground at what is going to be the most important election for the United Kingdom in history, right? The next election is the most important election we have ever had. And it annoys me and sickens me that that battleground is going to move to schools. Schools which are already captured by the woke left. But I always knew Labour would realise they had zero chance of being re-elected. So Slippery Starmer and Red Rayner have worked out their only hope is trying to rig the system. Now, the superstar panel. But first, these days we're living through economic whiplash, soaring prices, vanishing savings, and headlines that seem designed to confuse more than inform. Now, we're told this is all normal, that history's been rewritten for our own good, and that embracing these changes is the only path forward. But every outlet tells a different version of reality, and the so-called fact checkers are just enforcing the approved narrative. But luckily there's a solution. It's ground news. Hands down, the easiest way to stay informed because it cuts through all the spin, all the bias, so you can actually see what's going on and then make up your own mind. So I have it on my phone, as an app, and in my bookmarks online because it's become so essential to my daily life. See for yourself, by the way, at ground.news/outspoken. But I want to show you this incredible website and app in action before I tell you about today's deal. So let's use the very controversial story of the UK pop star, washed up pop star that is, using her BBC podcast with fellow presenter and close friend Mikita Oliver, equally awful, claiming she doesn't know how many abortions she's had before settling on 4 or 5. So what Ground News allows you to do is clearly in one place, over 60 sources, 67 sources in fact, covering the story. And then it instantly shows how the story is being covered by the media, broken down by whether the organisations lean to the left or the right. This is what's called the bias distribution chart. Then you scroll down and can literally see every headline about the story immediately, along with the political bias and ownership of the publication. So most of the coverage here is from outlets on the right because the left decided to shy away from covering such casually offensive comments. When looking at the headlines individually, the left-wing outlets that did cover the story tried to do so with sympathy. We Got This Covered praised her for challenging taboos. The Daily Mirror described it as a heartfelt admission. And Metro News went all out, arguing you can't judge Lily Allen's abortion confession and be pro-choice. But the coverage on the right-leaning outlets, far more strident. Fox News honed on the fact she was laughing during the confession. The Western Journal dismissed her boast as revolting. And The Spectator declared we should be outraged by Lily Allen's 4 or 5 abortions. Now, my favourite feature of Ground News is their blind spot feed, because what this does is every single day surface upwards of 20 stories that receive the majority of coverage from one side of the political spectrum. If you love the news, like I do, this blind spot feed is the best way to get a balanced perspective on what's really happening in the world. So go to ground.news/outspoken or scan the QR code on the screen to subscribe today. And check this out, you will get 40% off the same Vantage plan that I use for unlimited access. That's ground.news/outspoken. But now, back to the show. Alex Phillips, Mike Fairclough here. Alex, what do you make of this decision by Labour today? They promised it, but it doesn't mean that it makes it any easier to swallow.
Yeah, I think so many points that you've made are absolutely bang on. First of all, this idea that high school kids are automatically going to vote left wing isn't necessarily tried and tested. When you look at other countries, actually high school kids in the Netherlands polled extremely favourably in support of Geert Wilders and the PVV, the populist party over there. But like you also said, our schools are in the clutches of left-wing unions. So these kids are all going to be brainwashed on steroids about things such as net zero, which will be a central plank of Reform UK's general election manifesto, i.e. scrapping it. But this is gerrymandering. And the problem is what the Labour Party have done. Yes, this was in their manifesto. They've been playing with this for a long time because they think it will benefit them. They've seen how unpopular they are. And so they've broken the glass that says break here for 16-year-old votes. And we've seen what they did in local elections, of course. Yes, we're going to change the way various authorities are structured, so you don't need to have a ballot at all. They've just changed the system for voting in mayoral campaigns to have it as preferential candidate instead, following Reform's success in getting a couple of mayors elected. So what makes you think, if they actually think that break glass for 16-year-old votes isn't enough to get them over the line, that they won't also do break glass for PR or preferential candidates? And then what they will then do is form super coalitions with other left-wing parties, Plaid, the SNP, the Lib Dems, the Greens, coming up with ideas that we don't stand where you stand, etc. It will be like in France, where there's a super coalition of the left to keep reform out. Because what this indicates to me is this government has figured out it can't win by playing fairly and playing within the rules, so it's going to change the rules. And unfortunately, with that massive majority in Parliament, with the Lords loaded with left-wingers, and with some of these ideas already floated in the manifesto, there's not much we can do about it, Dan. So expect worse to come.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. And this was always why I warned, you cannot vote for Labour. You cannot vote for Labour because what they want to become is a forever government. Well, look, Mike Fairclough, great to have you on the show for the first time.
Thank you.
Perfect day for it, by the way, because you are Britain's most outspoken head teacher. Obviously, youngsters pretty well. Where do you stand on this? Do you think 16 and 17-year-olds should be able to vote?
No, I don't. But I'm just bracing myself for the sort of insufferably cringy time that we're going to have to endure now, because of course there's going to be like steroid level grooming and bribing of 16-year-olds from all parties now. And even watching Nigel, bless him, it's kind of is cringy when you see adults trying to kind of get down with the kids and everything, and I think it's just going to be like not particularly cool. I had to check out how many 16 and 17-year-olds there are in the country. There's 1.6 million, or just under 1.6 million. And I looked at the percentage of the vote in the general election last year from the general public, and it was 59.7%. So if you were to take that and apply it to the 16 to 17-year-olds, you're looking about 900,000. But what you're going to find is that now I was in the education system from 1995. I was a teacher for 10 years, and then I was a head teacher for 19 years. And I saw over the last maybe kind of 8 years of when I was there, and I left 2 years ago, this massive amount of indoctrination going on within the education sector. And it included everything from gender ideology to climate alarmism.
Yeah. And so let's be honest, Mike, let's be honest, right? And we know this, a lot of teachers will be now campaigning.
They will start to indoctrinate them. This is the thing, and it will happen. And we saw it this week with that little girl who was excluded for wearing a union flag dress. And the same thing will happen. They will be coerced and indoctrinated into voting Labour. So we're going to see next level cringe on the kind of media side of the political side, but we're also going to see some very nefarious stuff happening on the ground in schools.
Yeah, and I totally agree with all of that. I guess the one area, Alex, you might want to pick up on, though, is that weirdly, I think with Nigel Farage specifically, there is actually a sort of effortlessness in the way that he does deal with youngsters, because he's not trying to be cool, is he? And weirdly, that is part of the attraction. And I think, Alex, we've seen it with figures like Bernie Sanders in America, like the sort of thing that people assume is like, oh, the youth that are going to gravitate towards a young politician, but that actually really isn't always the case.
Yeah, Nigel's got by far the biggest following on TikTok. He's very
by
referred
far.
to as the GOAT, the greatest of all time. And like I said, when you looked at polling done in other Western European nations, this idea that high school kids, that it's a foredrawn conclusion that they're going to vote for the left isn't strictly true. But the Labour Party wouldn't be doing this if they had not done their maths, if they'd not done their polling, if they didn't think it would favour them. That's what you've got to bear in mind. This isn't an act of altruism. This is the Labour Party trying to gerrymander to make sure they can stay in power. So they will have done all of the surveying behind the scenes, the focus groups, the calculations. I mean, what's actually just given me some hope, actually, is when Mike's talking about the number of people we're talking about, you know, when we're looking at these extra voters who are finally part of the plebiscite, then you imagine that half of them probably won't bother to turn out to vote, which is what we have seen in the Welsh and the Scottish elections. And then you peel off maybe half again who won't vote left wing. Is it going to be enough to move the needle? But like I said, all these calculations will be taken into consideration when the Labour Party come up to 2029, and do not be surprised if they make other changes to the plebiscite to make sure there can be a left-wing heterogeny going forward for time immemorial. That's what worries me. It's a sign of the fact that this government wants to play tactics and change the rules when they can't win fairly.
Oh, big time. Big time. And I think it is really interesting to point that out, though, because actually the statistics that I've seen show actually there's no demand for this coming from youngsters themselves. I mean, 16 and 17-year-olds, they have enough pressure, right? They're thinking about A-levels, thinking about GCSEs. Like, they don't actually want to vote. And the polling shows that only 1 in 5 of 16 to 17-year-olds have any particular desire for this change to be made. But actually, that's why it's even more shameful and more disgraceful that Starmer and Rayner are pushing on with this for their own political reasons. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.